Yo, hopping in for some more post-trading analysis videos. We got Bitcoin and XMR in this one. A couple losses that I took shorting this Model 2 distribution, ended up going into a Model 1 distribution, which then, I hopped into some other trades that ended up being some winners. So I'll be making videos on those later, but in this one I'm going to highlight the two losses I took prior to, when price was a Model 2, prior to it going over into a Model 1, taking me out where, new entries were found within, that Model 1 confirmation, also, within these lower highs. So, we got a couple videos coming. I've been a bit behind on some of the post-trading analyses due to, traveling and other reasons, but, we're getting right back into it. So I'm going to drop a couple today. Overall, we were in that macro distributive area on Bitcoin that ended up hitting the technical target, and then it came down super aggressively. We're expecting, just a downtrend till a bear market bottom. We're in a very aggressive downtrend right now, so we can, expect that downtrend to continue until we start seeing more exhaustion prior to, a nice bottom formation before, we can expect a reversal. So we are kind of, at the bottom of the pivot that just came into, some pivotable demand, because it was the final demand before all of this liquidity right here, and we bounced from it and immediately went over into a distribution here. So firstly, actually, we went into an accumulation. So you can see this had an internal accumulation. If you guys are familiar with last cycle, if you've back tested that, you'll know that this price action is extremely similar to last cycle in the exact same location. I'll show that in a second once I mark out what's going on here. So, tap 1, 2, and what I did was I shorted this as the 3 as a Model 2 that you can see went over into a Model 1. So you get that accumulation that pushed price up. So I'm just going to real quick just show how similar this is. I even have it marked out. So you're on your 1, 2, 3 bearish legs. So now this cycle we have had 1, pullback, 2 pullback, 3 main bearish legs. Of course, there was an internal one that was, also of some significance, but a bit smaller, as you can see right there. Anyways, that was your last cycle top. 1, 2, 3 bearish legs, and that's kind of where we're at now in this cycle, where you had this clean accumulation. This one was nice and tradable, and then that pushed price up, and then we got the distribution here that ended up creating the next expansion to the downside. And this was also a redistribution after price had tapped a significant level, which was the completion of this technical target, and then also, I think there's some liquidity down here, and that then, kickstarted the next leg. Each of these distributions were redistributions on these legs, where you had the aggressive expansion, bounce, first bounce, distribution, aggressive expansion, bounce, first bounce, distribution, aggressive expansion, bounce, first bounce, distribution. So redistribution after redistribution on these market structure legs, some being much larger and, just of varying sizes. But, so maybe, a little sneak peek into what could be coming is we'll get another bearish leg prior to a more prolonged, extended bounce before actually getting that distribution confirmation for the reversal down. So got to be looking out for this and this in the coming days. You can always guess something like this. Even now, with the current price action we have, we could, continue trending higher before going and just, fail the distribution that we're inside of. That's always possible. We are coming down in a structured fashion, so who knows? Maybe we even want to, take the low before coming up and just form a larger range. Who knows? There's a lot of different scenarios that can happen. But, if we're following last cycle, it would look like a, another leg down before getting some, of what we just showed. So yeah, anyways, dived a bit deep into that unnecessarily. Just cause. So yeah, so where I shorted this was on the 45-minute break here. Clean looking distribution, valid trade to take, nice looking volume area, good range. Price came up, swept the highest extreme here, almost putting in equal highs up at the top there. and then broke that 45-minute structure, and I got stopped out there. So, you know, not too much more to say there. A lot of liquidity buildup. A lot of liquidity buildup there. I think this was a New York Open push up. Deviating that top one. Pre-London push up. And then, yeah, that was right on New York. My session times are off. Let's see. Okay, I'm not sure why New York isn't starting at 6:30 here. I'm not sure. Anyway, New York push up, reversal. Got that confirmation after the first manipulation hour. So yeah, clean confirmation there. Traders ended up failing. Moving on to XMR. On the high time frame on XMR, this chart doesn't show it because it doesn't have that chart history, but the chart looks something like this on the high time frame, where you have, you know, a move up, a deviation, and then something like this. So it kind of looks like a macro distribution on the high time frame. I'm just going to draw it because if you check out the crypto chart, you can actually see what I'm talking about. Maybe I even have it up. Bang. How perfect was my drawing? Anyway, macro looking distribution right here on XMR. Pulling it back up the chart, where we got that aggressive leg down, broke our structure to bearish here, and tapped into nothing but liquidity, with just liquidity below, you know, leaving that naked low there, bouncing and redistributing into some nice looking supply. So and I actually shorted the Model 1 on this retest. So I'm still in that trade. It's having very slow follow through. Not too crazy of a position, but it's just a nice exposure to the downside. You had somewhat of a potential TCT and TCT here, where I didn't wait for the TCT and TCT confirmation to enter, which never got confirmed. So, you know, maybe that's something to note there, is we had the potential TCT and TCT, and that never confirmed. But what did confirm was just a simple break of structure on this push up. I think I entered, yeah, somewhere around. Then we got the break here. I entered somewhere in this retest of that break, like this. Targeting that low for, you know, like a 4.5 or so RR. Price came for the extreme liquidity, but it wasn't the most extreme liquidity in the range. So, you know, that was some room for error there, because if we zoom in on this tap here, you can see, and this can even give confluence to the potential Model 1, but, you know, it's still valid to take, but you just got to know that you're entering with room for error. So if price does come from Model 1, that's expected, and you just got to be prepared to re-enter on there. And if you're going to enter on the Model 2, knowing that there's a higher chance of Model 1, you got to be prepared to enter on that Model 1 as well. It's actually preferred because it's a less room for error entry, where maybe you could enter with higher risk. But yeah, so anyways, swept this extreme, but didn't come for any of this other liquidity there. You know, I guess we swept, you know, this high. But anyway, there's a bunch of other liquidity here that didn't get swept. That price ended up coming back for on that Model 1 confirmation, which did end up leaving some liquidity on the way to that break, which just kind of made it a lower quality break. In both of these cases, you know, the best entry on this would have been, you know, you saw this aggressive push up. I think this was on a New York Open. Yep. Boom, New York Open. New York PM continued that move, and then you got a redistribution right here. Clean redistribution. With this internal break right here on the 5-minute. See what we were looking at on the low time frame within this. I mean, yeah, that could have been your clearest entry, clearest indication that you're going to get the reversal from that high. Even though you did have some demand below. But yeah, so those were the two trades. Those were the two trades. Appreciate you guys for watching. If you got any questions, let me know.